What is up, everyone? We're back amidst the mayhem that is Madden release with another deep dive. It's been a little while, and this one I'm particularly excited to do. The Los Angeles Rams coming in here at number 9 in my power rankings. Why am I so excited? Well, for those of you that have been around since the pre-draft process, I've been very critical of the moves this Rams team has done this offseason. When bringing in star names like Ndamukong Suh, Brandon Cooks, a pair of stud corners, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, obviously there's going to be crazy hype here, especially for the premier breakout team from last season, or the asterisk season, as I'm going to start calling it after all the injuries we saw last year. That breakout, even though I do recall telling everyone to pump the brakes on writing Jared Goff and these Rams off before the season even started in my 2017 deep dives. But anyway, you may be wondering how I can be so critical of these moves when all they did was get better. And they did get better. Hell, I have them as a top 10 team here. But like I always say to the fans who use the "we won X Games last year and all we did was get better" argument, well, newsflash, your team isn't the only team in the league who got better this offseason, where, believe it or not, all 32 teams seek to improve their roster and or coaching situation. And beyond just changing how your team looks on paper, significantly more important in terms of how much you can improve from year A to year B is just starting over with a clean slate of injuries, especially after what we saw from last season. So don't get me wrong, this Rams team has a ton of talent. Having them all the way down here at number 9 still makes them the best team in this very own division. I don't hate the Rams like most of you are going to accuse me of anyway, but the reality is this was a team who was handed a perfect bill of health amidst a historically gruesome season for injuries. This is a team whose offensive line went from one year a bottom 5 group in the league to the next year top 5, and is a group contingent on the health and sustained success of 3 veterans over the age of 30. This is a team who has the 3rd best quarterback in its own division, maybe even 4th if Rosen is somehow a stud, and probably about the 10th to 12th best quarterback in its own conference. They face a gruesome first place schedule in that tough NFC that many have deemed the deepest one conference has probably ever been in league history. They have no exterior pass rush, playing in a conference with Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, who week after week frustrate teams that can't contain the edge, and added 3 potentially corrosive players in their locker room and haven't paid their best player who's now kind of pissed off at the team. So yeah, with all of these signs for aggression, I am going to be a little critical of the Rams' literally all-in approach this offseason for a team that couldn't even win a home playoff game in a neutered league framework last year. So as we go through the positional grades here, we'll talk about these criticisms, but we'll also talk about the positives here, because there are a lot of positives around this Rams team. Again, I have them in the top 10, and just because I'm not as high on them as NFL Network, who ranks them like 2nd or whatever, doesn't mean I think this team's going to be bad. And then we'll hit on some under-the-radar players maybe to keep an eye on, and we'll wrap it all up looking at the schedule and what I actually think in terms of win total expectations for this team. So let's start off with the quarterback here, Jared Goff. We're not going to spend a ton of time here because he's probably one of the 3 or 4 quarterbacks in this league that I feel very confident, and I'm confident in my quarterback evaluations, but I feel very confident in saying that Jared Goff is a high-end system quarterback. He's a young Matt Ryan. He'll continue to develop from year to year. He's still young. He's accurate, can execute a system very well. But when you talk about my elite traits, see ball, hit ball, arm, throwing guys open, mobility, post-snap, play recognition, he's probably never going to have any truly elite traits outside of maybe pre-snap play recognition. You put a good team around him, and he can play at an MVP level, a la Matt Ryan, hence the comparison. But I don't really think he's ever going to truly elevate the players around him consistently. So at quarterback, the Rams come in tied with a group of other teams at 16th for me. So let's move right along and talk about the running backs here, where I have the Rams coming in at 3rd. Now, I actually prefer Zeke Elliott to Todd Gurley. A lot of people in the comments of my running back roster edit criticizing me having Zeke over Gurley. Well, Gurley's great. He's extremely explosive, but at his size, I don't think he runs with quite as much physical power and assertiveness as you get from Zeke. And I also like what Zeke can do in pass protection a lot more. And I think he might be just slightly more versatile as a receiver. I know that Todd Gurley had like over 10 yards a catch. A lot of that came on huge plays, screen plays. He's a good receiving back, but he's not really a versatile receiving back like David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell. You're not really seeing them flex him out wide and use him in a bunch of different ways as an actual receiver. It's a lot of very basic concepts where he's set up for huge plays, which is all good and well. He does his job to turn those into huge plays, possibly better than any running back in the league could do because he is so explosive. He might be the most explosive running back in the league. But the reason the Rams overall come in at third, even though I have Gurley as the fourth best running back in the league, is because of John Kelly, who I love. Now I know he's a 6th round pick. I probably need to tamper my expectations a little bit, but if you look at my pre-draft scouting report on him, it is almost identical to what I wrote about Kareem Hunt. Sleeper, tough guy, and above all, he had the best in the class balance, ability to understand angles, whether it's a pursuit angle or the way the guy's actually coming in to tackle him. I think this is the most underrated trait that running backs have, and I think it's what makes guys like Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt, who aren't necessarily David Johnson or Todd Gurley in terms of explosiveness, but it's that skill that makes them so good. I saw a lot of that from John Kelly at Tennessee. Does it translate to the next level? He's not the best athlete, so we'll have to wait and see. But I think if anything happened to Todd Gurley, John Kelly is going to be a league winner in terms of fantasy football. I think you're going to get a lot of production in the passing game. He's going to be able to run between the tackles as well. So I like the depth a lot there, adding John Kelly. What a steal. Behind him, Malcolm Brown, really good athlete, but probably never going to get a chance at this point to prove anything. But I do kind of like his game. And then you got Justin Davis, whatever. Hey guys, real quick, you can now get my full 2018 fantasy draft guide to help you win your draft and dominate your league. We're talking tier-based position ranks, risk assessment, and stat projections for over 200 players. There are 2 ways to get this little piece of magic. 1, become a $5 contributor on Patreon. 2, send $10 and your email via PayPal. Both links are in the description. Thanks, back to the video. So let's move on to the wide receivers here, and this is really where I'm so excited because I made a video in the pre-draft process just shredding the Rams for this Brandon Cooks situation, for everything about how they've handled this number 1 wide receiver role on this team. So let's just go back when they traded a 2nd round pick for Sammy Watkins. Inconsistent, injury issues, but true number 1 wide receiver upside. I got the trade, I liked it. But then they straight up just let him walk. They're going to get a future comp pick. It'll probably be about a 3rd round pick, but that's a future asset for a team that's looking to win this season. So you've wasted a 2nd round pick, and you have this big hole at wide receiver, and the guy they choose to target is Brandon Cooks, who Sean Payton was like, we don't want to pay you what you're going to ask for. Bill Belichick, you're not worth it. We'll just treat you as a rental and get a 1st round pick. So the Rams used their 1st round pick that they could have used on Harold Landry, a guy I love as an edge rusher that would have dramatically changed my opinion of this defense. And then you could have just paid Sammy Watkins exactly what you're paying Brandon Cooks now, which is a preposterous amount of money for a guy who is a younger Deshaun Jackson. I like Brandon Cooks, but he's not a number 1 receiver. He's a deep threat. He's fine, but he's not worth $16 million on a team that has a ton of contracts coming up. So you could have kept Sammy Watkins for that money. You don't give up your 1st round pick. And I actually think Sammy Watkins has a much higher upside as a true number 1 and is going to blow Brandon Cooks away in terms of the next 2 or 3 years in the NFL. So I get that they want that deep threat, but I think they already had that in Sammy Watkins. I think it helps this offense sustain some of the success they had last year, but what you gave up to sustain that is indefensible, in my opinion. So let's move on. That's more of a criticism about the future. He's going to be fine here. He's probably going to catch about 950 yards, about 65, 70 balls. I think that's what Brandon Cooks minus Tom Brady or Drew Brees is. He's probably going to score 5 or 6 touchdowns. But then you got some good weapons around him as well. Robert Woods as kind of the more versatile guy. You can do a lot of different things with him. Very solid. just doesn't have that one really high-end trait that Brandon Cooks has as a deep threat. And then Cooper Kupp, another versatile guy who plays really well in the slot. So they do come in for 11th here. I'm very critical, but it's a good wide receiver group. The depth is pretty bad, though. Mike Thomas, Josh Reynolds, Farrell Cooper. I think there's a pretty significant drop-off there as you get to 4 through 6, but that's okay. Just got to stay healthy like you did last year. And then tight end, you got Tyler Higbee still kind of the starter, but Gerald Everett, let's keep an eye on him. He was the first pick the Rams had last year. They didn't have their first-round pick because of the Goff trade. So keep an eye on Everett to, maybe win that starting job. If he does, I think he'd be highly relevant here. And then we talk about this offensive line. Really good group. Like I mentioned in the intro, they did such a good job of converting this from a really bad group to a very good group and an asset for this team. You start with Andrew Whitworth, total stud, just defying his age. Roger Saffold at left guard has been such a consistent veteran in this league. And then John Sullivan at center. Great comeback story for him coming into the Rams here. So left tackle to center, it's awesome. Very few teams have what the Rams have here. But like I said, these are 3 guys 30 years and older, and you can paint rainbows and butterflies over, projecting a repeat of what they had last year. But the odds of all 3 of these guys staying healthy, if you look at just the history in the last 2 or 3 years of injuries, for linemen at this age and regression for linemen at this age, there's a pretty low chance that they're going to keep all these guys. It definitely could happen, and if it does, they're going to be dominant again offensively. So we'll just have to wait and see if they can do that. But for me to sit here and project that, that's honestly kind of hard. And then the right guard is a liability. You do got Jamon Brown there. It's whatever. He's surrounded by a ton of talent, definitely elevating his play. And then Rob Havenstein definitely broke out last year as one of the best right tackles in the game. He should continue to grow, second-round pick in 2015. So at least you got some young talent in there as well. But really no depth either. So if you do have those injuries, you're looking at relying pretty heavily on rookies that this team spent a lot of draft picks on. Joseph Noteboom, Jamil Demby, and Brian Allen are probably all going to be the backups if anything goes wrong here. So again, they come in 9th. If they can stay healthy, it's going to help this offense stay as a top 10 to 12 offense, I believe. As far as where I rank them, I have them 13th. So I am projecting a pretty nice step back. I don't expect Jared Goff to be as efficient as he was last year. I don't think Todd Gurley's going to be able to rip off 10 yards a catch again. I do think there's a good chance that something goes wrong with this offensive line that had everything go right last year. So I think this team is going to have some adversity this year. You don't go 2 years in the NFL without any adversity on offense, but maybe they can just get that lucky. I do think they have enough talent here to sustain a couple injuries and still be, a competitive offense. But because Jared Goff's your quarterback, like I said, he's not really elevating the play of anyone around there. So your depth is going to be really important, and I don't see a ton of depth here on this offense. So we'll see. If they stay healthy, it'll be great. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. So I've got this defense much lower than most people are going to have them at 15th. And a lot of that is because pass rush weights very heavily in mind, and I am concerned about this edge rush, at least in terms of sustaining consistent week-to-week defense. Now, if you're playing a team with a poor interior line, this defense is going to be the second or third best defense in the league that week. But I think if you're playing Dallas or Green Bay, Philadelphia, some of these top-end teams who have really good interior guys who can at least slow down Aaron Donald a little bit. After Donald, this front seven is really bad. So that explains the ranking of 15th there. So we're going to go through this positionally. We rank the front seven by run defense, pass rush, and linebacker in terms of coverage ability. So let's start with the pass rush, like we just said. They rank 17th, which when you look at the edge rushers here, which is for most teams going to be the premier role here in terms of my rush ranking, this just speaks volumes to Aaron Donald, because your outside linebackers in this 3-4 scheme, your edge rushers, Samson Ebukam, who I probably didn't even say his name right, Matt Longackers, a rookie, Justin Lawler, and Ejuan Price. It's bad, but when you got Aaron Donald, who's unblockable by about 20 interior starting linemen in this league, you have to double him. Like you cannot go one-on-one. And then you also add in Ndamukong Suh, who is going to be an impact here, but I think that signing is getting slightly overrated in terms of his impact. You know, he is going to be a menace in one-on-one situations, but the fact of the matter is, it's hard to consistently interior rush and use that to disrupt the opposing quarterback week after week after week. It's much more consistent to do it from the edge. It's the reason the edge rushers get paid so much more. Donald is the exception, and that's why this ranking comes in at 17th. So let's move on to the run defense. It's going to be good just because it's going to be so hard to run up the middle here. This is where I think Ndamukong Suh is really going to make an impact, is in that run defense. You know, you're not going to be able to run a dive on this team. Just forget about it. But I am concerned about the linebackers behind those two. You know, Mark Barron, cover linebacker, not really making a huge impact in run defense. Then you got Corey Littleton. They signed Ramik Wilson. I do really like Micah Kaiser, who they took in the 5th round. Don't expect him to start, but, you know, could do it. Also, Tigre Scales, an undrafted rookie here who I had a pretty high grade on. I like him. Very smart player, just not a great athlete. We'll see if he can make the team. But the linebackers really not helping out too much here in terms of run D. The depth on the inside, you know, you got Michael Brockers as well, who we hadn't even mentioned. You know, I don't really factor him into the pass rush here. He's probably not going to be on the field too much in rush packages, but definitely going to be an impact in run defense. You got Ethan Westbrooks, John Franklin, who could actually end up being more of an edge rusher here, but he's kind of a hybrid. Tanzel Smart, you know, the depth is fine. It's pretty average. Also, Dominique Easley, still here. You know, crazy health concerns. I think he's healthy as of right now. Obviously, if he can be the 4th man in this rotation, it's gonna help this thing out even more. But that man has just never been able to stay on the field, so we'll see if he can do that. So 5th for run defense, and then the defensive backs, they get 4th. This was a liability for this team last year. They did have Tremaine Johnson here, so they replace him with Marcus Peters. Now, I kind of told people to slow their roll on Marcus Peters being this massive impact because, yes, he's better than Tremaine Johnson, but a big reason why he is better and is so much more widely liked is his playmaking ability. Makes all those big plays, so you do add that element. But in terms of coverage, if you look at their ability to run with wide receivers consistently, their PFF grades in terms of coverage, it's a slight uptick for Marcus Peters. So it's a slight upgrade in terms of coverage, but a big upgrade when you get Aqib Talib over there. But getting older, probably not going to be that top 10 corner that he once was. Still very good, though. Most teams would love to have Aqib Talib as their number 2. And then in the nickel, you got some guys who can play. Nickel Roby Coleman, really good nickel corner. They signed Sam Shields with some serious upside there. With, you know, big significant injury, I think a neck problem, or maybe it's just concussions. If they could get something from him, that'd be a great story. Then the depth is just kind of meh after that point. And then at safety, LaMarcus Joyner, undersized but a really good playmaker, instinctive guy. And then John Johnson, rookie last year, who really came on, especially in the second half. So super solid secondary. They rank 4th. Massive upgrade, I think, defensively. You know, we're going to see a big jump up because of what this coverage can do. So overall, like I said, 15th for defense. In certain weeks, they're going to look like the best defense in the league. In other weeks, I think this pass rush is going to get neutralized a little bit, and it's going to expose the coverage a little more, and it's going to be a more, you know, average to slightly above average defense. I think that's completely fair. Rams fans are going to call me crazy. They're going to say it's a top 5 defense, lock it in. I'm not so sure. I think it's a pretty matchup-dependent defense. Like, you play Seattle or the Texans, you're going to dominate. But you play, like I said, Philadelphia, Dallas, Green Bay, who have better interior lines, you know, they're going to neutralize that strength. So we'll see how that all plays out defensively. Coaching culture, I've got him 5th. I love Sean McVay. You know, I heard Matthew Berry say on the Bill Simmons podcast that he thinks Sean McVay is going to retire as one of the 5 greatest coaches of all time. And I didn't even blink. That just seems like we are so already on that path. He is a genius. He's young. To come in at this age and inspire these guys the way he did, he's awesome. The culture here is great. It's only going to help, you know, soothe this locker room that the second they lose a game, there's gonna be tension there with Ndamukong Suh, who's kind of on his own, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters. Hopefully Aaron Donald is paid by then. So, there's going to be some tension when this team suffers adversity, but I do think Sean McVay is going to do a pretty good job of easing that in. I'm not lower on this team because of the locker room issues, like a lot of people that are low on the Rams will say. I've got other reasons that I'm lower on this team, and that's Jared Goff and the pass rush, at least from the exterior. So let's take a look at the schedule here. What am I talking about here for the Rams? Like I said, freaking brutal schedule, man. A lot of people have criticized these deep dives because I've got teams, winning all their games at home and losing all the games at the road. This is another one of those. And, what that comes down to, my reasoning for that is, it's not going to play out like this. We all know that. They're not going to go 8-0 at home and 0-8 on the road. But from a Vegas prediction standpoint, you give the home team about 2.5 to 3.5 points. If I'm trying to predict week to week, that's just how it's going to look, especially when you're playing a good game almost every single week. So at Oakland, I gave this to Oakland. I'm not going to lie. I gave this to Oakland when I did this deep dive, so I want to keep this consistent through the entire series. Again, I'm going to do my official predictions when I finish these deep dives, but we gave it a question mark. Very solid chance the Rams could win that game in Oakland. But then, like I said, really tough schedule the rest of the way. You've got some 50-50 road games with Detroit and Chicago. They probably win one of those and lose the other. I think both those teams are going to be right there with the Rams in terms of competitiveness. Both those teams do have pretty good interior offensive lines. Explaining that a little bit. We've got them beating Green Bay at home, which is a question mark. So overall, 8-8 is my prediction for this Rams team. I just think they're going to play in so many close games. And when you're counting on Jared Goff in close games, it's a coin toss. He's not really dictating a whole lot and taking control of games at the end of the game, especially when you're playing other quarterbacks that I expect will be doing that. Phillip Rivers, Jimmy Garoppolo twice, Russell Wilson twice, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Carson Wentz. The quarterbacks are just so good on this schedule. It's going to be tough. So we'll see where I have them coming out when all is said and done, when I do my official flag planting predictions after these deep dives. Rams fans, let me know. You're not going to like what I said, but that's fine. I think you still got a really good football team and you got reasons to be excited. But I do definitely question why this team decided to go so all in when you're playing in this NFC that is just impossible. And I think you're really jeopardizing the 2021 Los Angeles Rams for a slight increased chance at a Super Bowl this year, which I still think is a long shot. If you're not a Rams fan, do you agree, disagree? Either way, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Helps me out so much, attracting views to this channel, which is a big goal, obviously. So cheers as always, guys. Back to roster editing for me. We'll see you next time.